Oh, I love how that covers up what I need. Here we go. Pre-show fun. And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael, and I have two amazing guests tonight. And as I'm about to introduce them, I just wanted to say to everyone, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. As a podcast host, my shows would be nothing without you all that are watching. So thank you. And with that being said, I have a special treat for you all tonight. I read their write-up, and the second I read it, I was so hoping that they were going to be a guest on the show, and here they are. So without further ado, I am going to allow them to introduce themselves. So I give you the totally amazing, talented, awesome Zenka and Adam.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. We're happy to be here. We have created something along the lines of your intro. You know, where does reality meet the unexplained? And that mystery has gotten us really curious about why miracles and mysteries happened. And we've wrapped it around kind of a think tank for science types to come and try what we call impossible things. So we realize that we can do impossible things. And whether it's spoon bending or getting out of a wheelchair or levitating or talking to your dead grandma, we realize that there's people that can do it. And so that kind of proves that we can. And so our mission is really to help everyone have those experiences by studying people who do it and then figuring out how they do it and then basically inviting people in to do it. And Adam, I'll let you talk a little bit about your work with the Dream Machine and also the Waking Induced Lucid Dreaming team that you run.
Yeah, so we take the things that Zenka just mentioned and form teams of 8 to 12 people where we do the research together on advanced lucid dreaming techniques and a thing we call lucid living, where we use the lucid dreaming practice to explore the possibilities, and then we bring those skills and knowledge into our waking life, basically dreaming awake.
So I'm curious, Adam, do you ever get people who come to your program and say, I wanted to join this because it sounds great, but to be honest, I don't ever dream?
We do actually. we let people know that we're going to explore advanced techniques, and it's surprising how many folks show up and say, this isn't happening for me at all. And it turns out that some of those folks are best, they make the best progress throughout the entire course. So it's something that everyone and anyone can do.
Yeah, Alan always tells the story in his Alan Steinfeld and his remote viewing team that we run, and he's always like, when they started doing remote viewing teams in major establishments and research facilities, they would get these super famous guys that come in and do what they call the targets, visualize the targets. And at one point they needed to they kind of wanted a control. So they brought a secretary from down the hall that was willing to come down the hall and be a control subject. And she was almost as good, if not better than they did.
Yeah. I think she turned out being their best.
Yeah. So
hitting targets. So.
It's not like the traditional learning that we think of, like you are going to study this history material or you're going to study this math problem until you can memorize it, until you can do it right. With psychic abilities, it's more of a click. It's more of a tapping in. And I can tell you right now, if you're curious about it, it means you already are tapped in. If there's something calling you like, oh, I wonder what they're doing, that means you're halfway there.
So I'm curious with everybody, became with the bending of the spoons. Matrix really made that popular with the key to bending the spoon is to realize there is no spoon. And it's like, everyone's like, well, how do you do that? Do you find that is actually like a true statement or observation around it, or do you think that was just Hollywood trying to come up with a way to explain it and it's really not that helpful?
Well, anything that makes you think during the process of bending spoons is not going to be helpful. We do believe, after all of our research, that there is a strange truth that no one ever taught you in school. And even people today, even the thinkers and leaders, are not fully conceptualizing, which is the fact that consciousness is actually more fundamental than matter. So just like the energy that surrounds us, like you're saying, or the energy, you talk about having an energetic problem that ends up manifesting into a disease, right? Like, you have issues with XYZ and all of a sudden, it shows up in your body as a disease. Same thing. So yeah, the spoon bending happens much before it hits the physical reality. So in that sense, there is no spoon. It's whatever the wave collapses. In quantum physics, you can look at it like that. In one version, the cat is dead. I don't bend a spoon. In another version, I bend the spoon, the cat's alive, Schrodinger cat is alive, right? So one of the things we have to get used to when we are conscious is that we can collapse any reality and experience that reality, as long as we don't block that reality from happening and are energetically open-minded. So, talk about the spoon bending and how pretty much everyone does it and how we do it, because They
do. So it's an interesting wave that kind of passes through people, and it's the suspension of disbelief. So I think that's another Matrix kind of throwback there. And I think that film, even though it's over 20 years old, it resonated so well because of the truth that it expressed. And so what is it that we do with dreaming and with being awake? How different is it? Well, let me look at it this way with you for a moment. When we dream, we use our consciousness to arrange the energy within our minds, and it forms a world that we can have an experience with. When we're awake, we do exactly the same thing. And so the two things are extremely similar One is a training ground and the other is where we get to actually do things, right? And so the experience we gain in both fields is identical. If you read an encyclopedia in your dreams and remember it, you're going to have that knowledge, just like you do when you're awake. If you read it while you're awake and you remember it, you have that knowledge. And so with the spoon bending, we're suspending disbelief and we're allowing our consciousness to formulate the world in a new and different way.
So I'm kind of curious, and I feel like this may be a question you guys get asked a lot, but I'm kind of really curious in my mind is, do certain spoons bend better than others? Is there like a difference in the metals, like a silver spoon versus a stainless steel spoon versus, well, I know plastic ain't going to bend anyway, so I don't know why I was going there.
Yeah. Well, the difference is only in our mind. So, you know, they have bent, you know, in spoon bending parties that have happened all over the world, they've bent crowbars. In fact, there's a thing where people can stand across from each other and have the crowbar like this. And then all of a sudden they trust each other and they let go and they push into it in the softest part and the whole thing bends. So there's only our concept of that is different. We use all different kinds of spoons to work with. Some of them are quite thick, but again, it's not the spoon itself. It's just your perception, because your brain is like, oh, that one's way too thick for me to bend. And there you go. You have not suspended the disbelief because you're expressing your disbelief. This spoon is too heavy to bend is what you're saying.
Right.
So, I mean, we basically cleaned out all the thrift stores around here. So we just go online to a restaurant supply and we buy spoons, normal spoons.
Stainless steel.
Yeah. So it's really interesting the way, I mean, just like if you meet a doctor and they're like, oh, you're paralyzed, you're not getting out of the wheelchair. So that's concretized your brain to think that this is impossible. Whereas maybe you went to some magical healing center that was in the mountains and they were like, look, everyone that comes here cures themselves in 30 days. So all of a sudden your brain's going, oh my gosh, that's going to be me too. And all of a sudden you start to create the reality that you want, which is, I'm going to get out of this wheelchair because of this secret thing they do every morning by saying, you know, whatever, abracadabra, and then you put water all over yourself. I mean, whatever the ritual is around it, it helps open your mind to that possibility, right?
Right.
And that hope and wonder, that like, oh, maybe I could do it. That is where you want to be in when you're trying to do something crazy like that. And in the spoon bending, we just cause total chaos. So you can't even think. Like we're jumping up and down, we're screaming at the camera, we're like, oh my God, what's going on? And then at that point, your brain just shuts off, stops blocking the reality of, you know, it just can't even, it just gives up. And then all of a sudden you, like he said, you see someone else bend it and then your brain's like, okay, whatever, I don't know, it's bending.
And then it just cascades through the crowd.
Yeah.
So we had 57 people at a conference. And I think, if I recall right, there was even a woman that had arthritis. And so there was no way for her to put any kind of physical force on it. And she bent, and when she bent her spoon, it caused everyone near her to believe that they could, and they all did it, and it went around the room. And so we had 100% of the people at that.
Tell them about the titanium too. I mean,
right. So there was a science.
Tungsten.
It was tungsten.
Yeah.
So some scientists, I think they were in the Midwest, they sent us a thick plate of tungsten, and they didn't tell us anything about it. And they said, see what you can do with this. And so we had it at a large gathering, and another fella and I, Zenka handed it to us, and we started, flexing on it to see like what's possible here. And we passed it back and forth. And I said, just pretend it's clay. And the other fella said, okay. And it just snapped in half. It snapped in half. And
which is incredible.
He handed it to me. I called Zenka over, and she kind of read us the riot act because we hadn't got it on camera. And she said, we'll see what you can do with it again. And so then I grabbed it, and it broke. And we did get that on camera. And so we packaged that up, and we sent it back to the researchers who had provided it. And go ahead and tell
and they were like, this was $200 worth of tungsten. And they were like, no way. They said, we can't, that we're scratching our heads in the lab over here because that's 1,000 times more pressure than a human being could put on that thing.
Is required to break something
that. And I was like, well, good thing you didn't tell us. So if you don't know that it's impossible to bend the spoon, then you would do it easily because it wouldn't be in your construct, your matrix of what you believed is or is not. I'm convinced after studying all these people that do these crazy, we've interviewed levitators. We've interviewed people that haven't eaten in like a year. It's just hard to even conceptualize that. But someone has done it, which implies that anything is actually possible, and we govern, we limit ourselves. So we've muscle test people that are having trouble bending. And it's like they have a belief of, that it's not religious to do this, or that they're going to be persecuted or burned at the stake or what. There's all these things that we carry with us from society. But now, our mission is really to take a second look and really look at our core assumptions about reality and say, wait a minute, we got our core assumptions wrong.
And I love how you keep bringing up the word impossible, because I was, like most people, and when I saw that word, I was like, my brain automatically shut down and was like, nope, if this is impossible, I'm not even going to read further because no point in it. And then I saw a picture where somebody put in one color, I am for I'm, and then the rest of the word in another color was possible, and said, here is what you're reading when you're saying impossible is I'm possible. And I was like, oh my God. It was like I had this moment where my body like started tingling, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So now when everybody will come up to me and say, that's impossible, I'm like, thank you. I really, have to thank you for that, because yes, I am possible. I'm here and I can do it.
Yeah, we've kind of thrown back and forth whether we should even have that word on our site, because if you go to LightNet, it just says the science of the impossible. And so we've kind of wondered, like, is it bad to actually put that word even in there? Maybe we should say redefining the possible. But yeah, that's such a powerful thing, because when you say I am, that's why there's a religion, the I am, like the spiritual movement. It's because you declare what you can do. Right. Not your society or your family or even yourself, but your higher self, or even it's a declaration like, I can bend a spoon. Or even better, I'm a spoon bender. So a lot of times we'll have people say that I am a spoon bender, even before they've ever done it. So it's getting their brain used to the idea that they are that, and that's the fast track to getting there, right? Because it's logical. If you're saying I can't do it, or I'm not a spoon bender, who do you think's going to bend faster? Someone that's like, okay, let me try it. I'm a spoon bender. Or someone that's like, I don't know about this. This might be hard. I might not be able to do it. So again, our thoughts create our beliefs and create our reality. So it's very very interesting.
I know me, if I was to put a spoon in my hand and try, I'd be sitting there going, either this is going to go naturally smooth like everything else, or if not, I'm putting the spoon down and walking away. It's like I don't. It's like I don't know what it is, but when I try something, if I don't get it right away, it's like I'm like, all right, now's not the time. I'll come back to it later if I come back at all.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with this is that it's pretty easy in the sense that you don't have to have prior experience. You don't have to be advanced in these subjects at all. And you can kind of not even believe that you can do it. I know that a lot of people come in with doubts. So that's even fine. But keeping an open mind is actually, in the research we've done, and other researchers too, like Jack Hauk, who taught 16,000 people to do it. He said you need at least 50% of the people open-minded. So that's a really good thing to practice. Open-minded.
I'll mention something that we've noticed over time. And a lot of times someone, especially when we do these things online, if someone's having a really hard time with their spoon or their fork or whatever it is they're trying to bend, and then we say, where'd you get that? Well, I got it out of the drawer. And it's like, well, is that part of your silverware? And do you have a desire to not do this because you don't want to mess it up? And a good percentage of the time when somebody's struggling, it's because they didn't go get something that they're okay with mangling and twisting into a knot, or it's their mother's, good silverware, or they're going to get in trouble if they do it, or they're going to be in trouble with themselves. And so go by the thrift store and pick up some cheap stuff that you don't care about and you're willing to throw it out if all goes well. And you'll be surprised how effective you are with that. Yeah, so sometimes it's really the most simple block.
Yeah, which brings up an interesting point. I was going to ask, like in the movie Matrix, you see him bending the spoon with his mind, but then gets distracted when she calls his name, and the spoon is perfectly straight. And I'm wondering, with you guys, when you're bending these, are you able to return them to normal, or once they're bent, they're pretty much bent?
That's right. Once they're bent, they're bent. They're hard again. But you could do the same process again to bend it back. But you have to go through the same process, because once it's bent, it's not possible to move it. There's a 15-second window where everything gets kind of warbly and it gets like rubbery, and then that window's over and your brain goes, oh gosh, what just happened? That's not possible. No. And then it stops. So it's a momentary suspension of disbelief. And then, like the first time I did it, I couldn't sleep the whole night long. I was just like, the implications of it were just like, what?
So would you say you're kind of in like a trance state when you do it, where your mind is totally free and your ego and everything is out of the way and it's just pure energetic thoughts?
Probably. When people talk in tongues in Pentecostal churches, people get out of the wheelchair because they're just like, they're caught in the moment. They're caught in the energy. They're caught in the like moment. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say we're in a trance because we're just standing there and we're talking back and forth. And so it's not that heavy of a ritual, where you're like, okay, zone out. You don't even have to meditate. A lot of people are like, I'll meditate. Well, the research shows you don't even have to meditate. So we just put on cool music, just like dancing, you know what I mean? And really try to have fun, because if you're thinking too much, it can be a little bit more difficult.
One of the things with the spoon, and one of the reasons that we do it, maybe even it's the main reason we do it, is because it's a gateway. Once you're able to do something where you suspended disbelief and you did something that seemed impossible, and what else is there for you? what other things might you be capable of? And that's the main question, and that seems to spark in people's minds. It's been astounding to us how many people we meet a year down the road and they say, you know what, that changed my life.
Oh, I would imagine, because, man, if I'm sitting here and I'm able to bend a spoon without even really moving or using any energy of the body, I could not imagine anything in life going, man, this is done to me. This is it. I've reached my pinnacle point, because I'm like, I bent the spoon without a single ounce of energy. How is this going to best me?
Yeah, and where does it lead you, right?
Right.
So then you can try the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. We had someone that was very accomplished. This is a little over a year ago. She was very accomplished at bending spoons, and we were getting a coffee. And I said to her, she was like, what should I try next? And I said, well, there's a signpost over there. Why don't you do that? And she did, from a distance. I said, well, you can go to streetlights next if you'd like to.
Yeah, I think the city would prefer you not.
Right. But think what they'd have to admit to come after you on that.
Imagine, as well as the officer trying to write that ticket going, well, they didn't actually touch the light pole, but they bent the light pole and damaged it, but we didn't actually see them do it. It's like I could just see the judge going, how are we trying this case? Why is this even in front of me?
It's the Matrix. It's breaking the rules because you can, because it's the I am, because you decide. Ultimately, your subconscious adds with your conscious mind. That's why we're so confused. Like, why is this happening to me? It's because you have no idea what's in your subconscious mind. It's very difficult to understand, and that's 80% of it. So you have black box 80%. You have 20% or whatever, 5% trying to run the ship, when really it's your subconscious mind that needs reprogramming.
You know, that makes sense. And I'm kind of wondering, because like you're saying, you know, bending the spoons opens so many doors. I'm kind of wondering, when you first bent your first spoon, were you like, oh man, this is like a lucid dream, and then all of a sudden that unlocked? Or did the lucid dreaming come first and go, oh, well, if I can control my dreams, can I control the spoon and bend the spoon?
Yeah, you know, I was really excited about spoon bending, but I'd never done it the first time I did it. And I didn't know any place that I could try it with other people. And so I read the instructions on how to do it, and they said it's hard to do it alone, so do it with 15 people. So I got together 15 people, and they said that you needed someone that could bend spoons to do it, like to be there. You need one person that believes and then can just show everyone that, hey, this is it. And so I had called around bookshops and tried to find this person. And finally, this random person was like, at a mystical bookshop, was like, okay, I'll help you out. I'll come. Then she cancels 2 hours before. She cancels. And I was like, oh, you know, and I tried the night before just to kind of test, couldn't do it. So I was like, wow. And then I was at the park and I was burying my son, who was like 5 at the time, in some sand. And all of a sudden I lifted out, and there was a spoon that was bent, a plastic spoon that was like bent in half. And this guy walked by at that exact moment with this "Just Do It" t-shirt on. And that's what happened here. I mean, this fork I found when I moved to Sedona. I wasn't doing spoon bending parties again. And then I found this in my yard. It was like, oh, you got to do spoon bending parties again. I was like, okay. So anyway, long story short, I get there and there's only 14 people. I was like, I can't do the party. We need 15. And so some girl calls her dad and mom, was like, you got to come. And they came and we did it. And it was, like I said, I couldn't sleep last night. That night, I was just like, what?
Part of me wonders, do you really need the 15, or is that just another matrix of control of saying, you need this much energy to do this, and you really could do it with 13 people.
We've done it with less. So 50% of people after the party can bend on their own. 50%. But this goes back to the math and the science behind the author Lynn McTaggart. So she believes that you get 8 people together that have a same intention, and you basically can cure someone, get them out of a wheelchair, do all sorts of things with just 8 people focused on the same outcome. So it's almost, that's why we do groups of 8 to 12 for our teams, is because you get that many people. I mean, because rarely do you have 8 to 12 people that all are focused on the same goal. You're at work, some guy's doing this, someone is doing that. They don't believe in you. They don't care about spoon bending. They think it's crazy. They think it's this. They think it's that. It's very rare to get 8 to 12 people together that's like, yeah, let's bend the spoon. So it's interesting. That's a very strong way to manifest things, is to get some people together and say, okay, let's go heal this person, or let's create this community center, or whatever it is, right? It's very powerful when you get people. I mean, in the Bible, I guess they say it's 12 people, right? But it could be one person. But there's something about group intention that is we want to make a film about it. We're so fascinated by the topic because we've seen night and day.
That'd be really cool. And I wonder if Keanu Reeves would even go into it, because his role in the Matrix being like, hey, let's, do the spoon bending.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We should contact him, because we should invite him to our spoon bending parties too. We love it.
Watch everybody be like, the one is here. Be like, yes, you're sitting there. You're all the one.
I am the one.
I am possible.
I am possible.
So one of the things that's come out through the data is, in the groups, when a person is intending things for themselves, they have about a 60% chance on average of achieving whatever that is. If other people are intending the same thing for them, it goes up to 85 to 90% success rate. And we wondered for a long time, what's happening there? And then we had dinner with some friends, and we're standing in the parking lot, just shooting the breeze. And one of the ladies said, I think I know. And she said, when you ask for something for yourself, you have all the stuff that came with it, all the reasons that you don't have it right now. They're all there with you. And so you're trying to cut them out of the way. But when I say, Michael, I want you to be successful, I got nothing, no blockage. I'm bringing all of that pure intention to you right now in this moment. And I think we can do that in the groups of 8. We can do it with prayer. We can do it with reciting intentions and sharing them with loved ones and friends. We have a massive potential to do really good things for each other.
Yeah, and I think you're onto something too with having, not doing it by yourself, because if you're in the room by yourself, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to start to mentally block yourself because you're like, it's not bending. Should have bent by now. This isn't working. And you're going to be able to talk yourself out of it because nobody's there to stop it. And you're going to put the spoon down and go, nope, that didn't work. Whereas I think if you have other people around, and I hate to say it this way, but it's kind of where I think my mind is going for some reason, is when you see somebody else bend the spoon, it's like your mind automatically goes, oh no, I'm not going to let that person outshine me. If they can do it, I have to be able to do it. And it's like something inside us pushes us to do what we normally wouldn't do because somebody else did it. And we don't want to be the only one that didn't do it.
Yes, seeing is believing. And I think that's why kids do it really well, because they want to prove their parents wrong, like you're saying, or prove something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a joke in our family that, like, my dad and I had. People would say, like, oh, you can't do this or that. And we're like, watch us. We'll do it. And in the movies, the Star Trek remake, when Chris Pine, where he goes to board the shuttle to go to Starfleet, he goes, 4 years, I'll do it in 3. I'm like, that's the attitude I grew up with is, you tell me I can't do it, I'll do it, or I'll even do it faster.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the whole ethos of what we're doing in general. It's like, let's reconsider this base reality and what we've assumed up until now, because it's more fun to lucid dream, to lucid live. One day you're going to be in a coffin. I don't want to have regrets. I want to try things and do things that I want to do, and I know that I can create those circumstances that it happens in. And it's just a slow process of removing thoughts and doubts. And it's just a slow process, but it actually results in a fabulous life. I mean, I'm happier now than I've ever been in my life. It's cool to put that in motion and teach other people how to do that. It's very powerful.
It is. And I'm curious with the lucid dreaming, when you start dreaming at night and you're like, okay, my understanding of lucid dreaming is like, I can say, okay, that ball is a blue ball, and the ball becomes blue, and you can control what that ball does, and you can control what goes on in the dream. So it's like you're really awake, but you're asleep. How do you remember the dreams? Because I wonder if sometimes when you get the people that say, I don't dream, it's not that they don't dream. It's when they wake up, their mind is blank. They have no memories of the dreams.
Right. That's one of the main things, one of the main topics in our teams is working on strategies to remember. One of the techniques that we use is in the beginning is to put a notepad near where you rest. And as soon as you wake up, write some notes, draw a picture, anything that helps you grab that moment and crystallize it. Because as you're saying, we all dream. It's part of the healthy mental process. Almost everyone has a period of REM sleep. And in that REM sleep, the mind's basically taking information that was stored in short-term memory during the day, and it's filtering through it and seeing, what are we going to keep? What are we going to put into long-term storage, and what can we just dump and get rid of? So that's a natural part of the dreaming process. Excuse me. And we can be conscious and awake for that review period, but then we launch into something that's, as you were mentioning, a lot more fun. And while we can control it, we don't want to get immersed in the details. So I'll give you an example. Say you wanted to go and fly over a forest. Would you like to plant every tree, shrub, and blade of grass so that it was arranged exactly the way you want it? Maybe. If that's your thing, then you could have a dream that lasts 1,000 years and you could plant the forest. But the other option is to just say, I'm going to fly over a forest. And somehow, in some way, that forest appears. Whether you're generally through procedural generation, if you're making the whole thing right now, you're showing up to one that already exists, or we inherently have that ability to make an entire environment all the details are just included.
Which brings up an interesting question, is because I know a lot of people now when they sleep are all about like the astral travel, being able to say go to France in your sleep and stand on top of the Eiffel Tower, for example. So if I'm understanding the lucid dreaming aspect, really, is that astral travel is actually lucid dreaming, or are they just very similar and they are two different aspects?
Well, so it gets into the minutia of different ways of describing things. So we can have lucid dreams within our minds, and we can have lucid dreams outside our minds. Some folks like to call that astral travel, celestial travel. Remote viewing is a way to describe that. It's when we project our awareness outside of our physicality. That's when we're perceiving the world with our awareness directly. And if you like calling that astral travel, that's fine. There are astral planes that are maintained by different societies where they use that type of travel for educational purposes. Now, I can think of the Tibetan monks maintain a thing they call a Tibetan astral plane, and it's a university system where the monks go while they're sleeping, and they continue their studies at night.
That actually makes sense why they can do the things that they do.
Maximize the time.
Yeah. Just because the body needs to sleep doesn't mean the mind does.
Well, yeah, and our consciousness, so the type of consciousness that we're using when we're awake, where I don't personally believe that it's directly tied to our physicality, it is intertwined with it. And so there's a nice period of relaxation where the physical systems can rest and rejuvenate and go through repair cycles. And it's nice to let them do that. And our conscious awareness can then either entertain itself within the confines of its own cell, or it can go and wander the universe, wander dimensions. It's truly boundless in its capacity to travel.
Yes, that's true. And Linda Judd has an interesting question for you both. What's your take on frequency and how it opens pathways?
So, the weird part about everything is we're 99.6% nothing. There's a lot of space. If you drill down and with a microscope, there's a lot of space of nothing. And, they're all vibrating at a certain frequency, right? The little particles are vibrating. And when you're in different vibrations, you have different experiences. So when you're in an alpha state of love and unity, you experience something. If you're in theta, where you're like creative and almost dreaming and playing jazz, it's another brain state. When you're delta, you're asleep. So these frequencies rule your experience. And they also are contained in every object. So an orange has a frequency, a crystal has a frequency. All of it has a frequency, and frequencies can coexist with each other. But if one is very strong, it's going to entrain this one, to also go with it, right? And at some point, you go with that. And I think to some extent, we may be, we're going to Japan in a couple of days for our conference. We're going to do spoon bending and things like that. And we talked to a physicist who's going to be speaking at our conference, and he ran across water without even realizing it in front of an entire park full of people. What just happened? And I have a feeling that his brain was in a lucid state, right? In a theta state. And you mentioned that earlier. So we may be dipping in and out of different frequencies and therefore experiencing reality in a different way.
Right, kind of like the Matrix, where in the first movie when Neo or Keanu Reeves' character realizes he's in the Matrix and doesn't have to be, all of a sudden all the doors, all the windows, everything turns into the code that runs down the screen, and realizing, yeah, there's nothing in front of me but the code. And even a step further would be is to merge into, I don't know if you saw the movie Tron Evolution, where she had her arm severed and he's looking at her holographic and says, oh, here's the bad DNA, takes it out and just flicks it away and turns to dust and creates a new one. And all of a sudden her arm grows back fully functional. And I was like, man, that would be awesome to have that ability. And then I was like, wait a minute. If it's in these two movies, then why isn't it real and possible? In which case, we probably have that ability to regenerate like that.
Yeah, and that's even more extreme than even we're researching at this point. Because I mean, we research levitators, which we think is pretty far out there in terms of like, oh, we want to expand our relationships with what we think is possible. But you know, we work with frequency devices all the time. So there's the biocharger, there's all these different beds and things like that that basically bypass your subconscious mind. And they put your body in a certain frequency. So if that's how the Rife machine worked, it measured a specific frequency of a specific thing. So cancer was a dark red and it had a frequency, an exact signature, exact number, exact. And he realized that if he could send the exact same frequency back, it would just like crash and cancel itself. And so we can. So essentially, if you knew the frequency of Zenka's arm to make it go back again, potentially you could feed that into the field and it would appear that way. Now that's pretty far of a stretch to where our minds are, where our technology we think is. But essentially, that's true. And then essentially, everything is consciousness. I can make up anything about anything, and I could experience it if I truly convince myself and believe that I could. But it's easier said than done. Because like I said, it's not just your conscious mind, like, oh, I want to, you know, I want to do this. It's all the layers of subconscious programming that you have from 7 generations and more. So we're carrying ourselves, we're carrying each other forward, but we can leap. I mean, just like our, you know, radio thing we did with the ETs, like making music with ETs. I mean, we thought, wow, are they using frequency to play our devices without touching them? Because we set out on this quest to make music with people on the other side. And it was beyond science or beyond knowledge of that this was possible. But we got, you know, 8 to 12 people together and we're like, let's just do it. We had gotten ETs to come over ham radios in a way that just literally broke physics completely. There's no possible way that this radio could be making noise and this is silent if they're all on the same channel. So we were already in a realm of like complete and total what is going on. Then we decided we wanted them to see pictures coming through. And so we wired up all these antennas to our computers and we sat and they sent us pictures. And then we said, okay, we want them to make voices over the radios. And they did that too. So, I mean, I was giving a talk in Los Angeles and I was like, you guys get into your heart. What do you actually dream of? What do you actually want? You know, if you could, if there wasn't these, I can't, you know, I'm not, you know, and I was thinking to myself, well, I want them to come through the radios and speak because that's what I was working on in my team. Sure enough, in my talk, there was voices through the radio. And this was just after the lights had gone off and on. And I was like, whoa. And so things, you can let the world inspire you and allow it to create things that you've never experienced. So when we started doing the music team, tell them a little bit about that. That was such a wild experience, who we attracted into the team and everything. It was so crazy.
Yeah, we had a fellow that actually designed apps for that very purpose. And he had designed a music app. So we said, okay, this is going to be easy. And we all believed that it was going to be easy. And we set out to do it. And what was it, 3 times? About the first 3 times we got together, nothing happened.
Silence.
15 minutes of silence. Okay, we're going to let them come through now after building up a good intention. Nothing. And so then we said, well, maybe if we sing to them, they'll sing back. And we had one or two wonderful musicians there in our group, just happened to be there.
Playing frequencies.
And they were playing frequencies, crystal harps and sound bowls. And so we would serenade them for the first 15 minutes, and then we would sit back and they started to play. And they played every type of device that we could set up that they could access.
It was crazy. So they were on phone apps that were designed for ghost radios, and they were playing air guitar for like 15 minutes, and it sounded horrible, but they just kept going. And we were just like, what is going on? They play piano, and it sounded super creepy because they didn't know how to play piano. I didn't know how to play. No one knew how to play piano. Then we built them an app where they could actually pick crop circles. And we're like, I wonder if they could find the human in the little pictograms. And sure enough, they land on the human and just play that one. I mean, they were playing theremins and devices that allow you to, if you get close to them, they start buzzing, so it was very eye-opening, mind-expanding, heart-opening. We felt like anthropologists, and we felt like we were making contact with the other side. So we think our eyes can see everything we see, but actually there's a lot here that our little eyes in the frequency, we can't see infrared. We can't see a lot of things. So you never know who's right here on top of us. We're so limited, the little thing that we can experience. And when we open our minds, we're opening it to more. And when we solicit ETs to say, okay, you guys, I am soliciting your intervention. I'm soliciting that you break the veil and come over here and do this with us. And they were delighted too. It was wild. We did this over and over again. Then we did it at a conference, and they played live in front of all these people. It was crazy.
And the one thing I find that's really interesting is you must have a little bit of telepathic or psychic abilities, because just as you started saying that, my mind, I was going, okay, we're talking about frequency. I'm wondering, is the music with the ETs and the frequency? And then you went right there, and I was like, God, is she reading my mind right now?
Pretty much. We all have that ability. I mean, because we're all connected at a very deep level. I was telling Adam the other day, I'm taking this. I was taking this was actually happening in your team. So he was teaching lucid living and lucid dreaming. And we were talking about those when you get grabbed by an object and your eye stays a little long, it's like you're in the supermarket. It's like, oh, the Ziploc bags, huh? And you're like, I don't need Ziploc bags. I'm not going to get it. Or you say, I'm going to leave these shoes here. I'm leaving. But the shoes are like, oh, take the shoes. But you're like, oh, logically, I don't need the shoes. And then this happened to me 3 times in 1 week. It was like, I should have bought the Ziplocs. I should have taken the shoes. So let's break this down. What does this actually mean? It means that a part of me, or a guide that's next to me, knows the future, knows that I'm going to need that Ziploc bag in the future. And this happens all the time. It's happened to you. I'm sure it has. But we don't listen to these things because we're not even aware that the world is built of our consciousness, is built of magic. Like, we have way more access to things than we ever had dreamed of.
And I love that, because I was actually being interviewed earlier this afternoon, and one of the things I wanted to express to people on this podcast show was time is not a straight linear line. It's a loop. And what happened in the past and the future is happening right now in this moment. And I expressed and I said to people, when you look into the past, when they tell you know your past, it's not knowing what you did in the 5th grade or the 1st grade. It's knowing your ancestors, knowing your past lives, knowing all of that came to this point. And then I said, and then you have the future. And the future isn't, okay, you're going to do this in 3 years. No, you're going to get a feeling of, I need to take a right here. Even though my house is to the left, there's something to the right that you're being called to. And I said, that's your future self guiding you by coming and telling you, in this moment, do this. Trust me. It'll be in your favor. And so, yeah. And so it's interesting that you were just basically saying the same thing.
Well, we're connected. You and I are connected. I'm connected to him. I'm connected to Linda, Varen, Callie. We're all connected, and we're not really sure how that works, but we're all on the same team, working toward the same results. And the same results, in my opinion, is being yourself and feeling freedom to be in your frequency, whatever that means to you. Whether it means cooking, or whether it means race car driving, or whether it means taking a walk. There's a lot of things that we kind of deny ourselves or stop thinking because we don't think it's possible, or there's all these but ifs, cans to the I am. The I am gets thrown out. It's kind of just like, oh, I wish. But there's something that's calling us forward. And one of the things we're working on right now in our next season, we just got done with the remote viewing and all these other things, and we're working on purpose, because we think that miracles happen when you align joy and intention. At the same time, all of a sudden you start meeting people, like you're having this experience right now. We are together. So you're influencing me. I'm influencing you. We're having this, like, it's interesting, right? What you were just saying, that you were just in these themes. So there's something magical that happens when people have a self-knowing and are free to be themselves. It's free for you to start this podcast, you know, that you are curious about, that you resonate with, not because, you know, any other reason, but because it makes you happy, right? And so our next teams of 8 are all about purpose, figuring out deeply who you are. What is your flow state? If you could do anything, what might you do? And just getting familiar with your likes and dislikes and starting to hone in on that. Because once you do, you're vibrating at a very high frequency because you're in joy and curiosity. The curiosity is where your brain throws out all the other patterns. The curiosity, you know, like when you're in love and like all the like logic flies out the window and you're like, I don't know why, you know, you're in love, you know. Yeah. It's the same thing with your purpose. You start to become in love with your life. You start to become in love with yourself. You start to become in love with people around you. And the opportunities in that, the curiosity opens your brain, just like in the spoon bending, it opens it up. Like, what if I could bend a spoon tonight? So just for tonight, you open up your brain during that party. So this is the same thing. We really are excited to help people. And it's cool because You know, we just found out last week that Melissa Tittle, who is the creator of Ancient Aliens, Ancient Civilization, she also created Code 12, which is an amazing film with Nassim Haramein and all this stuff about numbers and base 12 math and how the pyramids work in the universe. And now she just did a film about Joe Dispenza called The Source. And that movie was a hardcore look at, you know, this miracle healing that Joe Dispenza does with intention, right? And meditation and frequency and vibration, right? So they basically raised a ton of money and they had people spit testing and had them on complete brain gear and everything. And they studied, like, how is this person sick? And then they're well a couple days later, like, what is actually happening? And so they were able to really document that with hard science, not just like, oh, it happened, trust me. Like, no, this is hard science. And so on the 26th, we're having her come and talk about her purpose and get people excited about our teams in October, because this is really, you know, I spent till I was halfway through my life before I figured out who I was. I was just doing things for everyone else and making things work, and, you know, and that's fine too. But when you really step into your own freedom, like Adam, you studying waking induced lucid dreaming, this is his deepest passion. He doesn't have to do it for, you know, a living or this or that, you know, because his class is just one day a week. But that alone opens so many things in his life because he's, you know, it's joy.
Right. And when we're asked, when we do interviews like this wonderful program of yours, people will sometimes ask us, what does heaven on earth look like to you? And I thought about that for a long time, and I'm going to describe this. What heaven on earth looks like to me is every single thing that we interact with, a pen, a piece of paper, computer, kombucha, whatever it might be, that it was made with love and intention. And that comes from people living their purpose. So when we see something that's made by a craftsperson and we can feel the authenticity of that expression in it, that's that person living their purpose. And as this spreads out into the greater world and people are discovering and then living their purpose, our world can be, our human-made world can be filled with that. You know, when we are in nature, there's a perfection to it. And that's God's purpose, right? It's right. Being expressed there. Love, joy, and creativity. And so we want to help all of humanity reach that so they can align with that type of vision, and we can have heaven on earth.
You know, and I agree. And I can't help but think right now, I was like, you know, talking, you know, thinking about how we need visuals, you know, to help show that we can. And a lot of, you know, people are saying, like, in Hollywood now, a lot of movies are being made to show us things we can do we always thought were impossible, like The Matrix. And as you were talking about the ham radios, the movie Frequency came and popped into my head, where he talks to his dad in the past because he had passed away in the current. And I was like, maybe, you know, people like could watch that movie, and if they watched it with the intention of, this is real, this is showing me how to do it, may not need to have the electrical storm or the weather storm outside to make it work, but still you can see the premise of, yeah, I can connect to someone in a different time through this device. How cool is that to actually have that visual? So like Zenka was saying, you know, by yourself, you know, you don't have the person to see. You could put the movie on and maybe be like, oh, they did it, I can do it, and do it.
Yeah. It's really about that innocent heart. You know, someone was like, this world is like, someone touches you and say, you can have whatever you want as long as it's truthful, as long as it's pure. So if there's that little curiosity, that little boy curiosity, and be like, I wonder if I could do that. Like, maybe I could. You're in the maybe I really could. You're not in the doubt. You're not in the worry. You're not in the confusion.
No.
You're not in the like BS of how and how much money and who would you need to do this. And it's just an innocent, pure desire, a thought of wanting to experience something. And we believe that that could be the case with just this life in general, but we've been so shut down. At some point, like there's this girl we're working with at the Purpose Lab. She works with teenage girls from around the world. And she's like, yeah, I wonder at what point they shut down. Like they stop believing in themselves or the world or their dreams. And that is a tragedy, right? So we need to all rekindle our curiosity and let that be okay. Like it's okay to be curious about stuff. It's okay to try it out.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that society has drained out of humanity is we're always taught growing up, oh, your imagination is great. That's great. You have this imaginary friend. You have such a vivid imagination. Then we get to our teenage years and like, well, it's great you have that, but we also got to start focusing on the future, your adulthood. And then as an adult, we're told, no imagination. You work, you make a living, you go through the day. This is it. This is what your purpose is. And I'm like, somehow I managed to skip all of that and keep some of my childhood innocence to where like sometimes if I like feeling a little down, I'll go put a cartoon from my childhood on and I'll be like instantly feeling much better the next day and be like, I'm back on top and ready for the day.
Cool.
And it's like, and I'm like, yeah, I know I'm watching a cartoon as an adult, but I'm like, I don't care that people, will judge me for that. I'm like, it brings me joy. That's what matters.
And yeah, that is because joy is contagious. I'm happy just listening to you talk about that experience. It makes me happy. So all of a sudden, I'm happier already for the rest of the night because that makes me happy. So that's really important to figure out in ourselves, like what makes us come alive and what makes us happy. And it can take years to figure that out. Sometimes you don't even have time in 1 week to do anything that you want to do for an hour, truly want to do, so right. We've got a lot of things to carve out, and we've studied, these 100 people that have found their purpose, and we looked at the patterns, and it's a lot about flow. It's a lot about courage. It's a lot about starting somewhere. I mean, you had to start somewhere when you did this show. You were just telling me before we started, the show came into your life, and then you were like, no, because your purpose is supposed to scare you and excite you at the same time. It's supposed to bring you into your own evolution. And, right. And then 3 years later, you start the show. So it can take a lifetime sometimes, and then your purpose is changing, right? So in some moments, your purpose is to cook a meal that everyone will absolutely love, or to do an interview where people will have more hope or more curiosity. So there's different purposes, but it feels good to be yourself. No matter if you're watching cartoons or cooking a meal or whatever, it feels good. We're not in alignment enough. And once you get into alignment, then you get out of alignment and you're like, I can't do this. I have to move. I have to go to a new house. I have to do something else. I have to cook something different tonight because doesn't feel as good as it does when you're doing it in alignment.
Right. And we're actually about 10 minutes over the hour. So I want to thank you both for coming on And thank you for sharing all of this with us. And I have to say, I have a feeling I'll be thinking about a lot of this tonight. And I have a feeling my thoughts will not be of how is this going to work, more of how am I not doing this already and rewriting a lot of things. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, push through the fear, because I have fear, Adam has fear, we all have fear that stops us from taking that little step forward toward the thing that made us curious. But it's so rewarding, and then it gets easier and easier. So thank you so much for having us on, and everyone who's been commenting on it and everything. So it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Michael, thanks to you and your listeners.
Yes, thank you. And hopefully we'll have you both on again in the future, talk some more about this, because I have a feeling as much as we talked about, we're still on that proverbial tip of the iceberg.
Yep. It's a rabbit hole. It's definitely a rabbit hole.
You know, I love how you say that, because I start to describe my shows as delving down the rabbit hole to see just where it'll end. And the beauty is when you think you've hit the bottom, all of a sudden a new hole appears and you're like, oh, it goes even deeper.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And thank you to all who were watching. And as Zenka said, thank you to those who participated in the chat room. So wherever you are in the world, make it a beautiful, wonderful day, night, afternoon, wherever you are. And if you're asleep, feel free to wake up and watch this episode, subliminally planting that in for you.
Yep.
You'll thank us later, trust me.
Yep.
So before I go into the outro, do both of you have anything you'd like to add or say to the audience right before checking out?
No, just everything that needed to happen tonight happened. So it's all just the ideas are planted, and may they flourish. I think you're going to add some notes in the show notes for where you guys can spoon bend with us or find your purpose with us, but we look forward to meeting you.
Yes, and all the links to find Zenka and Adam are in the description. And full transparency, they added some links that I will be adding to the YouTube and Rumble page as soon as we're done, that they gave me before we started. So I will add those in, so you will have all the links to get a hold of them. So thank you all. And thank you again to Zenka and Adam. It was a true blessing and honor to have you on.
Likewise. Thank you so much for what you're doing, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.